All right, hello everyone. I'm Lonnie with Untitled Nerd Network, brought to you by both Infinity Flux and your local Satanist out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I am here. This has been like literally years in the making. Here with Mr. Bill Koeb, who has been kind enough to join us and talk about some things. And welcome to the channel, Bill.
Hello, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, I want to get like first things first.
Yeah.
I want to talk about how I know who you are,
Okay.
and if you'll, there's the story behind this, a very interesting story. I think I may have told you about this a while back, but
Yeah.
back in, I think when was this? About '96 ish, when the Crow City of Angels released.
Yeah.
And if you look back behind me here, you'll see the painting from the Crow City of Angels. This isn't the original. This is the actual print that was one. And my cousin, who is 4 years older than I, we went on Halloween to the local comic book shop, and the comic book store owner was handing out a pack of Crow City of Angels trading cards to whoever would come in, buy something. It was like a little Halloween giveaway.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
he gave myself and my cousin came in, I guess, to save bags. He put both of our orders into one bag. He put both of our trading card packs into one bag. So on the way home, I took my pack out, opened it up, and there was a print, like a little card that had this painting on it. I was like, okay. So I flipped it over, and there was a printed code on it that said, hey, call this 800 number, give us your name and address and this code, and we'll send you a print. And to this day, he claims, my older cousin, claims that should have been his. Because he was like, if you'd have just waited till we got home and we'd have sorted those packs out, I would have got it. I was like, no. So it's been one of those like family points of contention for like 22 years now.
That's funny.
But yeah, like if I ask him, if I had him here right now and said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Oh, it's mine, but you've got it hung up on your wall. But yeah, I had it like rolled up for a while, and then just a couple of years ago, I managed to get me a frame, which it's sized to a way that it doesn't really. I haven't been able to find a frame. I'll have to get one custom made, but there's a little sides on it. But I guess first off, I want to know the story behind the painting. Is that the only work that you did for the movie, or is that just the most well known?
Yeah, no, that's the most well known. The rest of the work I did for the movie. So that painting, the original painting, is owned by the production company. I don't remember the name of the producer that has it, but I saw it when they were promoting the film. There was like a little smudge of ink on it he asked me about, and so I just like took a little tissue and wiped it off because that was from Mia Kirshner, sort of painting on the painting. So
Yeah.
yeah, so there were a lot of paintings. A lot of the work, except for that piece, most of the work was based on smaller existing paintings that I had done. There were really more illustrations than paintings. And basically I got the job because I had done this painting called Flame Heads. It was these three figures, kind of these weird sort of bald children with flames behind them. And it was just kind of an experimental piece using photographs and acrylic paint and all kinds of stuff. And I was at the San Diego Comic Con, or Comic Con International as it's known, whatever. I always call it the wrong thing. And I was actually not at the table. I had an artist alley table, but they'd given it away to somebody else. So they gave me a table in the kind of the main showroom area,
Yeah.
I think. And so I actually was in the bathroom or doing something, I don't know. But my girlfriend at the time was at the table and she said, "Oh, these guys came around from The Crow." And I'm like, "Well, I knew who James O'Barr was, and I knew there was a Crow movie. I don't think I'd seen the original Crow yet, or maybe I had, but so then they came back, and it was Alex McDowell, who was the production designer on both films. And Alex McDowell has done tons of films. I think he did The Cat in the Hat. He's a really talented, really nice guy. And then James O'Barr, and I hadn't met either of them, but they said that they liked the painting and they wanted me to do um, artwork for the movie, a sequel to the movie. And so, they told me about it and stuff. And I'm like, of course I said yes. Uh, I'm like, this is great. Yeah, I must have seen the first one because I know I liked it. Um, and I had read some of the comics as well. And so I'm like, of course I said yes. And so then, um, a few weeks later or something like that, um, this must have been 1995. They had me come down to Los Angeles. I got to see the set. I got to see what they were working on and talk to them and sort of see what they wanted. And then, and that was great. I met, oh God, I'm so bad with names. I met the director of the film. You can add this in later, I guess, the director's name. Or I could look it up on IMDb and we'll come back to it. Um, I'm so horrible. Anyways, so we talked and they talked about what they wanted, and they wanted a dozen or so original paintings, and they wanted this one large image of the Crow character holding Sarah. And Sarah is basically the little girl from the first movie,
Yeah.
grown up, and she's a tattoo artist, and she's living in Los Angeles. And then there's another person is killed unjustly. And then he and his son are killed. And then he comes back, to avenge his death and to right wrongs, basically. But he has this connection with her. And she's painting this image, and she doesn't really know what it means or what it's about. But they so they wanted sort of a painting that looked like it was in progress, kind of an unfinished painting. And looking at it now, like I saw an earlier version of this. I saw an earlier version of it, a photo I had taken at my house, and that was less finished. And I think if I were to do it now, I would probably not finish it as much as it is to that degree. I would probably have left more of an in progress look, but I think at the time I was really trying to do a great job, because
Yeah. It was
the
going to be on a
pressure.
movie.
This is going to be a movie. Yeah. So the pressure's on. So like, you better do a really good job. Don't screw it up, as they say. So there was that. And then they had, I had a portfolio of other images and things that they saw. And so they picked images that they wanted me to reproduce larger. And then we talked and we agreed on all these different things, and that they would own that image, but I would own the rest of the artwork. And then I knew through my girlfriend at the time, I knew someone who had done budgets for art for films.
Mm-hmm.
And so she gave me an idea about what to charge and about what rights to ask for. Anyways, then I got calls from the lawyers, and there was a lot of negotiation with lawyers, and which was so much fun.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine like you agree to everything, and then somebody comes along and tells you that it's going to be completely different than that. And then you're like, well, I can't do it then because this is different than what we talked about.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of back and forth about what they could have, what I could do. And the time kept shrinking. It went from about 3 months. and then I was busy working on fault lines for Vertigo at the time. And then actually, I was on a trip to Seattle, and I was on the phone on Vashon Island, which is a little island off of Seattle that you can only get through to from a ferry.
Oh,
Can't drive there. It's where my girlfriend at the time's brother lived, and so I was there, and so I guess I was either talking to the lawyer or talking to somebody, but basically they'd agreed to everything, and it was a go. It was a lot less money than it probably should have been, but again, it was going to be in a movie, and I liked that. It was going to be paintings, and I liked that idea. Um, I'd been doing a lot of illustration at the time, um, and I was enjoying that, but I wanted to paint more. I wanted to paint larger, and so yeah. So then, in about when I got back, I basically started, and I basically enlarged black and white prints of my existing paintings, and then kind of like giant photocopies,
yeah.
stretch those onto canvas, and then created, I don't know, 7 or 8 or 9 other paintings. Hang on, let me show you one. Okay,
Okay,
this one's not. Well, I'll show it to you, then I'll talk about it.
sure. So one of the things that is just really cool because Bill has some really cool work that I'm a huge fan of. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh yeah, absolutely. That's really cool.
Could you see that? Okay.
Yeah. I don't recall. I remember seeing because whenever I was doing a Google search to actually, this was 6 years ago, something like that. I was doing a Google search to try to find you because I knew, I believe your signature was on here. Yeah, no, down here at the bottom.
Yeah.
It actually has your name on it because I don't think you actually signed that painting, did you? Due to the movie.
Probably not because of the movie.
Yeah. Well, it has your name down at the bottom here, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna find this guy. We live in the age of the internet, and so sure enough, I found you, and I was like, hey, and of course, you're very approachable. I was like, yeah, awesome. The person behind this print, I'm able to just kind of sit down and have a conversation with. That's awesome. So I mean that's really cool.
Thanks,
and
I appreciate that.
This for 20 years now. This has been one of my most prized art possessions. As far as posters, prints, any kind of nerd stuff that I have, and that's actually saying a lot. So.
No, I appreciate that's very nice of you to say. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I did that, and actually I had about 2 weeks to do everything, and that one I think was painted in oils and mixed media. There's some things glued down to the canvas, like some photos glued down in the background. It's a large painting. I mean, it's probably, well, I don't know, large. I mean, it's probably 4 by 6, maybe.
Yeah, I know it. I know it's larger than this, just from the photos I've seen of it on the set.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty big, and it probably looks even bigger because one thing I learned about when I was on the set is that actors are a lot smaller in real life than they are in movies. Like, and I felt like a giant because Mia Kirshner, who was very nice, she's like 5'0", and Vince Perez wasn't very tall, and I guess I discovered that a lot of actors that I ran across when I was down there aren't very tall, and so it probably looks huge on the set because and I don't know what that is. I don't know if there's a correlation there. I mean, I'm sure there are. I mean, I was watching Saturday Night Live the other day, and Liev Schreiber is probably 6'2" or 6'3". He looks gigantic though. But you're gonna edit this to make this look better, right?
No, actually, no,
Yeah,
no. We're
this
good. We're good.
we're
There are
good.
times where we'll be talking, and that's one of the things that I pride Untitled Nerd Network on is 99.9 of the stuff that comes through is totally unedited, and
Okay,
a lot of it is that's a lot of people find that as our charm. I mean,
that's fine.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't want to embarrass you or anything, but typically, whenever you're getting up and going to get the painting, like
yeah.
I'm planned for that. I talk
Oh,
through
okay.
it and things like
Yeah,
that, and I like addressing that during our videos.
yeah. I mean,
That
I'm down
way,
to say something else stupid, or
no, it's good. Like I said, that's part of the charm of the channel. Is this is
yeah,
where people come for a candid look
yeah.
at whatever it is we're doing. Like, Lord only knows where our phone interview is going to go this evening with Leah, but
Right.
um,
Well, yeah. I mean, but anyway, so it was cool. I mean, being on a Hollywood set was really interesting. I visited the set twice. Once when uh, I think I was down there for just a family visit, and I was on the set, and they needed someone. That was my son who just walked in.
hey,
Um, um, wants to talk about the contracts and stuff,
yeah,
and then wants to sort of like they wanted some touch up on the set, like some um some like drawings on the walls and stuff of
yeah,
her studio, which you've seen the movie, so it's like this incredible looking amazing studio. Um and it's supposed to be, I guess, above Los Angeles marketplace,
mhm,
but it's a set. But then you see the marketplace too, because we went to locations, to kind of scout locations. I sort of like I went down to Los Angeles the first time, and I met with them, and then they were scouting locations, and I'm like, cool. They're like, do you want to go? I'm like, sure, that sounds great. So
cool,
we went to this market in Los Angeles, and then we went and we got Chinese food, and this is all coming back to me because it's been 23 years now. So, but I just remember that as being really fun on a bus with all of these people in the production, like the set dresser and the costume people and, the director and all of this stuff, all these people. And they're all talking about the movie, and you're just watching this whole thing happen. And one thing that occurred to me was that being a director has got to be one of the most incredibly difficult jobs, because
oh
not
yeah,
only are you trying to not only are you trying to interpret this text and turn it into a film, and you're supervising all these different things, and you're making all these different decisions, and you've got to manage all these people, and I'm sure you have assistants and all that to help. But also, I think, from what I've seen of, like, behind the scenes of movies and stuff, and my limited experience, is that it seems like the director does a lot of sort of cheerleading, like really keeping everybody motivated and focused, because making a movie is not like an overnight thing. It takes a while. And so it seems like the director's job is also to, like, keep everybody morally kind of boosted up,
for the most part, most of them do anyway.
to try. I mean, yeah, you always hear the horror stories about, oh, he treated his actors like chattel, but
Yeah,
um, but I was really impressed by that, because it's hard to maintain, and I'm sure anybody who's worked on a long-term project knows this. I think, at least, that it's hard to maintain enthusiasm over a long period of time on a project, especially when it's not easy and things don't go well. And this speaks directly to comics, because any comics project, and I've talked about this with other artists, is that it takes a long time. I mean, doing comics is harder than doing illustration, because you make an illustration, you do it, it might take a week, it might take a few days. The old days it would be like weeks or months, but you know a week to 2 or 3 days, and then you're done with it, and then you move on to something else.
yeah,
But with a comics project, you've got to read the script, you've got to lay it out, you've got to, if you use photo reference, you've got to get that shot. Um, you print, in the old days you had to print it out. Nowadays you just, I guess it's on your computer, but you're working on it for a long time, and it's got to be consistent throughout the entire book.
But a
The
lot of
people,
times, depending on your writer, like I've actually, during my interview with Richard Starkings, he was talking about how some writers, they are an absolute pain to work with. Like I believe Alan Moore, he's one of those that will like give you minute instructions, like,
yeah,
hey, this rock needs to be here, and
yeah,
you know, do you
but
ever
that's
work with
his.
anybody like that?
Um, I have worked with difficult people, but I probably wasn't the easiest person to work with at the time either. Um, but yeah, I've worked with difficult people, and I've been back and forth. Nothing that particular, but the thing with Alan Moore's work is that um, I read the script for one of the issues of or part of the script for one of the issues of Big Numbers, and I remember it was for issue 4, and I remember reading the script. Now, typically, like a comic book is like about one page of script, one physical page of script equals about a page of artwork, and so Big Numbers had 9 panels per page, so there was like a page of script for every panel. And so I think that with Alan Moore, I think it's part of his entire vision that he has such a complete idea about the meaning of everything in his work, that it doesn't leave a lot of room for veering off of that left or right. Um, or if it does, it's hard to, because it's such a complete vision. So it's kind of like, it's a house of cards. If you pull out the bottom card, the whole thing crumbles. And I
Yeah,
think, with his work in particular, is that it's so thought through, and it's so heady, and there's so much to it that's he's thought about even before he's written it out. I've never met the man, I've never spoken to him, but just my impression is that there's so much that goes into it before you ever see the script, that um you know that he's got all this stuff. There's a reason why all those things are.
oh yeah,
And so it's like you'd have to you'd almost have to like be able to peel back the layers and see the universe, from his point of view, to see, he can see the overall vision, I'm sure. And when you're reading a script in comics, you're trying to figure out a way to interpret things. And most comic scripts aren't like that. Most comic scripts, sometimes they're like, the person does this and the person does this, and there's this action and this action. And I like to read the script and try to figure out what's actually going on. And sometimes the writer's description can be somewhat hindering. Sometimes it can be really helpful. Um, I'm, I like to interpret things. And so for me at least, the kind of script that works best is one where, like, if it's like a movie script and it says this is the scene and this is the dialogue, and then I can break it down any way that I see fit. And just try to make it work, and then show it to the person, and then have a kind of a conversation back and forth. That's much more of a collaborative way of working, and I also like if I was writing something, I like to be surprised,
oh
and
yeah.
so um, I remember hearing that, you know or reading that, I think Electra Assassin was kind of like a tennis match, that Frank Miller would throw some things out there, and then Bill Sienkiewicz would respond, and not always with what Frank expected, and but it gave him something to work off of. And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why that project still stands up 32 years later. Electra Assassin came out in '86, and there's still, it still has a huge fan base, and it's still, I mean, it's a great work, and I think to have that kind of relationship, and to have that sort of, um, the ability to go back and forth. Now, not everybody has that sort of vision for comics, and I praise Alan Moore for that, because he sort of tries to elevate the work to a higher level. Um,
I know
but
he's not a
yeah,
big fan of what they have going on now. You know.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm barely aware of what's going on in comics these days. I mean, I read I've been reading Days of Hate
Mhm.
by I'm going to mispronounce his name, Danijel Zizelj, who's I'm a huge fan of his work, and I don't remember the writer's name, but it's a great book. Um, and it's again, you have to kind of see the whole series to see how it works, right?
Oh yeah, typically.
So, yeah.
I
So
mean, sometimes, especially, there are some books that you can hop right in issue, 17 or,
yeah,
issue 4 of a 6 issue limited. But yeah, I mean, oh man, like the way I've noticed that a lot of TV shows, a lot of comic books, different things, they have that shared universe
yeah,
thing about them. And it's like, if you miss one episode, might as well not even bother until,
right. It's like coming in. It's like watching Doctor Who and coming into like the middle of the thing and trying to figure it out, and you're trying to know who these characters are
yeah.
and what their motivation is and why they're important. And that's one of the things Netflix is great for, because you can now actually go back and watch the whole series or watch something.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love it. You don't have to wait.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to ask, you as an artist, who do you find inspires you? Did any particular artist like spark that creative drive that made you think I want to be a painter?
Well, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of different people. So it goes back. I hope I did. I answer the question about the crow painting. Did I cover that enough?
Oh, yes, yes, most
Okay.
definitely. I'm
I
satisfied. If I am, then
I just want to make sure, because, like, as I told you before we started, that like I can go off on tangents, um, huge tangents. So, um, and I have one of those memories that I kind of remember. Well, as you can see, I can't remember people's names,
oh,
but
by the way, Tim Pope is the director.
Tim Pope, thank you. Yeah, God, you saved me. Yeah, just re-edit it so it sounds like I said yes. Tim Pope directed the Crow City of Angels. And he was great. He was a really nice guy, and just um, I really was amazed at watching his energy. Years ago, a long time ago, I was like 22 or 23. One of my very first professional art jobs was working on what's called animatics. An animatic is what they show a client to show them sort of what a commercial is going to look like.
Kind of like
It's like,
a storyboard kind of
yeah, kind
thing.
of like a storyboard,
Yeah.
but it's like an animated
Hmm.
storyboard. And they do it for like proof of concept, and they use them for showing clients what things are going to look like. And this was a Ritz Crackers Go to the Moon commercial, and it was directed by Henry Selick, who worked with Tim Burton and did Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach. Um, and this was before then. So what I was impressed with, no, I mean, one of the facts is that Selick was just really smart, and but he was also really intense. He knew what he wanted, and he was really good at keeping people like helping you find the motivation, or helping,
Yeah.
like if you didn't feel good about what you did, like just kind of say, no, that's exactly what I wanted. And um and so that was kind of a huge thing. And so and I try to remember those kinds of things when I'm teaching classes, because I know how easy it is for students to get discouraged. And so I try really hard to find something in their work that's working, and and to just kind of see when they need the extra, like, encouragement.
Yeah,
um
I can totally respect how, I understand how you work under someone or you see someone, you observe them being a motivational, positive person, and then wanting to emulate that
yeah,
when you
yeah,
work with other people. So yeah,
right. And so, like, I've really tried to kind of take that and, like, you know and just keep people, people do seem to do their best work when they feel good about what they're doing, and they learn more when they feel good. Um, and so I just try to, those kinds of things come to my mind when I'm teaching or when I'm, whenever I'm in charge. Sometimes I'm in charge of things, but um, yeah. So what inspired me? Well, okay. So I started reading comics probably about 5 or 6 years old. So that would be 1970, 71. Um, and I know there were other comics, but the one I remember is Batman 237. So Batman 237, the cover was the Grim Reaper. Um, I think it was attacking Robin, and Batman was on the cover too. And that, first of all, that kind of blew my mind. And then you open up the book, and on page one, Batman's dead, and there's a scythe blade through his chest.
Wow.
And you're like, oh crap, Batman's dead. Now I knew who Batman was because I'd probably seen the Batman show or
Yeah.
cartoon, something like that. But this was Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil. And I believe it was Denny O'Neil writing it, but this was Neil Adams' artwork. And for me, Adams' work with watching a movie on a page. It was so it was really lifelike, it came alive. And so I remember reading this story, and this is a story that had like comics writers in it and comic characters. The story takes place at kind of a comic con, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and there's like a parade going down the street, and there's like Robin walking and talking with these different guys, but there's like a whole bunch of cameos, like Bernie Wrightson's in it, and I think Jeffrey Jones is in it, and a whole bunch of other like pros who lived in the kind of the same area. So they had real people mixed in with comics characters, and so there'd be like a parade, a float with all these comics fans dressed up as superheroes and stuff. And so the Batman that died at the beginning wasn't Batman; it was a guy in a costume.
Oh.
It was a con attendee or something. But what I remember is that there's this scene where Robin is being attacked by this Grim Reaper character, and Robin's foot slips on a rock and he falls backwards. And to me, that was like watching a movie.
Yeah.
I could remember it, and I was about 6 years old. So this is kind of a dark story for a 6-year-old kid to be looking at. Um, but but anyways, just that really struck me because it was so vivid, and so I was like, wow, I want to draw comic books, and then there was a kid in school who could copy characters that looked just like, to my eyes in elementary school, that looked just like the artwork that he was drawing from. And it was like, that's amazing. I want to be able to do that. And I think my older sister gave me a drawing that somebody had done of Captain America that I wish I still had. I mean, these are things that go back,
Yeah.
50 years, 45, 50 years. It's hard to believe I've been alive that long to reference that much time. But
It's kind of funny because whenever you mentioned about the Daredevil story that came out in like what 86, I was like, oh, I was 2 years old when that came
right,
out.
right, yeah. So those are some good comics, though. I mean, like the whole Daredevil series, that the Miller issues, and then the Mazzucchelli issues that came out after that. That's a lot of that stuff is being pulled for the TV show. You see like storylines.
Oh yeah.
The Miller Mazzucchelli issues that are being used in the TV show. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, that's Daredevil's mother. She's a nun. It's like, sorry to spoil that for anybody. Sorry, spoiler alert.
No,
you haven't seen it. It's been out for a while.
Yeah, if something's been out for more than a couple of months, we're just like, watch at your own risk, people.
Right. Darth Vader is Luke's father, and Luke and Leia are sisters and sister and brother.
Damn it.
Damn, I know. It's just a whole generation. Just a lot. That's kind of the go-to spoiler, right? But anyways, so that impressed me. And then There's been a lot of artists. I mean, I liked John Byrne's work when I was like 11 or 12 years old. He was drawing the Avengers and Iron Fist,
Mm-hmm.
and then later on the X-Men. And it was really interesting to me because his work looked different depending on who inked it. I remember I really liked the way Dan Green inked him, but I also liked the way Terry Austin inked him, and on the X-Men, because there was just this real crispness about Austin's inks.
Yeah.
And then, the Superman Muhammad Ali book came out when I was a kid. The Ra's al Ghul book, those giant size editions. My brother and my grandfather and I would walk down to Thrifty Drugs and get ice cream, and they would have this magazine rack, and at the bottom of the magazine rack there would be comics, and they had all these giant sized editions. So there was like a giant sized Shazam that I got, the Marvel family, the DC Marvel family,
Mm-hmm.
Captain Marvel, Mary Marvel, Captain Marvel Jr., etc. In a giant sized edition, there was a Spider-Man, Superman one. There was a Hulk one there, but there was the two that I remember getting was the Superman versus Muhammad Ali and the Batman Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul series, and those were both by Adams. So those were sort of a big, and plus they were huge. They were close to probably original art size, and so those. And then later on, I remember being about 10 years old, thinking I want to draw comic books for a living. And I don't know what got into my head that I even thought that was a thing you could do. But then, my taste changed. Things, and then Bill Sienkiewicz came around, and this is in the late 70s, early 80s, and Bill was doing Moon Knight. And when I saw there were some later issues of Moon Knight, there was one about this. There's one that had this black and white cover, and it was just Moon Knight in silhouette, kind of like a half of Moon Knight with a black and white cover. Mm-hmm. And it was beautiful. And I think the colorist on it was Christy Scheel. And there was this whole kind of dream nightmare sequence that was all in greens and yellows and stuff that was beautiful. And just the way characters were kind of stretched and the way things were kind of pushed around, it was different, and it was beautiful, and it was interesting, and it wasn't it referenced life more. I think I was looking more towards things that looked like actual, looked more real. Also there's Michael Golden too. God, Michael Golden did Avengers Annual 10
Yeah,
around
the first appearance of Rogue, right?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful book.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the originals for that at a comic book convention, or seeing pages. No, maybe it was Xeroxes of that. And there was one page that I guess went missing or something, so they reproduced it from the pencils or something like that, or somebody else inked it. I don't remember exactly, but that was such a gorgeous book. And he had this really kind of soft way of portraying things. Like his women were very, very feminine, and his characters had this really dynamic way of like twisting their bodies and stuff. Yeah, that was the first appearance of Rogue, and that was a pretty great. I mean, it's still, people still think of that book.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's the only Avengers Annual I can remember.
Yeah.
So sorry for all the other dozens of annuals. But there was that one, and then Sienkiewicz's work. And then when I was about 18, I heard Bill Sienkiewicz was doing an appearance at a comic book store. I was living in Livermore, California at the time, and the rest of my family, my parents had split up when I was 13, but I was living there, and my brother was in San Jose, and so we would go to conventions together from I was like 17 or so. We'd go to these comic book conventions, Creation Con in San Francisco, which is cool. It's a kind of a big deal to be like 17 at the time and driving to San Francisco. And so I get to see all this cool stuff and meet people. So then Bill was doing an appearance in. He did one in San Francisco and he did one in Berkeley, and I forget which came first. But I remember walking into the comic book store, and there were pages from a short story Bill had done called "Slow Dancer," and I saw just these beautiful originals, and they were full color. They were gorgeous. It was just the first couple pages of the story, and I was really blown away. And then, I mean, of course, I was 18. I was socially awkward. I had no, I was completely socially anxious at the time. And so I talked to Bill, and got it. And the funny thing is now Bill's like 7 years older than me, so he was only about 25 years old to think about
Yeah.
it. So when I really think about it, I'm like, God, we were both kids. Um, and so I talked to him and stuff, and then I came back to the second appearance. I think the second appearance was in San Francisco, at maybe at Comics and Comics, down in North Beach. It might have been on Lombard Street or something like that. Anyways, and I just remember just wanting him to draw stuff in a sketchbook and having him draw stuff in a sketchbook, and he did these beautiful drawings. And then I asked him if he would draw Tarzan, and I don't know why. I guess I'd read all the Tarzan books,
Yeah.
or a bunch when I was like a teenager. Again, because the Adams covers, I read a bunch of them, and so because Neil Adams did all these sort of watercolor uh, illustrations for the covers of a lot of the Tarzans, and so he drew a Tarzan in my book. It was in pencil, and sadly, I don't know where that book is. It's a sketchbook.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a drawing by Dan Brereton in there. I've got a drawing by Mobius in there. Brent Anderson drawing. I don't know where the book is. Hopefully it's somewhere in my stuff.
Okay. I
But
was like,
from moving.
there's hope there, though, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I mean, it's just one of those things. You pack things up and move. And back in 2002, my wife and I and our baby and two cats moved from California to here to North Carolina, and I don't, honestly, I don't know. I mean, things disappear when you're moving.
Oh, I'm sure there's some things now that if they were to pop up, I'd be like, oh my God, I forgot I had that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. So it was Bill's work, and then from Bill's work, I saw interviews, and he talked about illustrators like Bob Peak and Bernie Fuchs and Mark English and Baron Story, and of course, I went and I looked these people up, and then I was in junior college taking art classes, and then I saw that I had a friend that went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and I went up there with her one time to visit, and I was probably about 20 years old, maybe 19 or 20, and there was an exhibition of Baron's work, and it really, again, it really kind of blew my mind because I had seen his illustration work, but these were all his personal pieces, and there was a dream series of paintings about a dream he had, and it was self-referential, and it was mixed medium. It was acrylic and pencil and collage and all these different things. And so when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go to art school, I didn't know where anybody else was teaching, but I knew he was teaching there. So that's one of the reasons I went to the school I went to,
oh,
because he was teaching. I mean, that was the sole reason for going to the Academy of Art at that time for me, was that Baron was teaching there. And then later, I mean, I took his class a few times, and later he became an influence, in a lot of ways, a mentor. I ended up working on a mural that he was doing for the Museum of Natural History. This was about 1988. I was working on sort of taking these little tiny paintings of, not tiny, but small paintings of the rainforest, and that he had put a grid over, and then finding that square on the larger panel and reproducing what you saw on the small panel on the larger panel.
oh,
Yeah. So kind of copying it, but copying up about 3 or 4 times the size, or maybe 5 times the size.
your
And
style though, you're more of like a mixed medium yourself.
yeah,
Like you're
yeah.
not just one or the other. You have a variation of numerous, I guess,
Yeah,
media that you use. And if you like, you look and I would actually like to take a minute and kind of look around.
sure.
You've got some other
Yeah,
other
yeah,
works there.
yeah. So here I'll show you.
Yeah.
Um, so this is a wall of sketches, and these are primarily done in chalk pastel. They're called new pastels. Um, and then that one on the end, that's oil on paper. Um, let's see, you've seen that. Um, this is I don't know if you can see the whole thing. This is a
Yeah.
monotype, which back in 2015 I had a show at a gallery called Anno Domini or Anno Domini Gallery in San Jose. And I did well. They showed about 45 of my monotypes. And let's see. Let's walk over to the other room. So, um, let's see. So, it's a couple of other things. So this is a large painting. Well, it's about 4 feet square, called Yellow Boots Kosovo, and that was done back in 98, 99 about the war in Kosovo.
Okay.
And I'd read a story about a child who was found with their yellow galoshes on. Um,
Wow.
this is, yeah. So, I mean, you read stuff like that and it just, you kind of can't help but paint. This is a wall of 12-inch square paintings. Some of them are finished, some of them aren't. They're primarily oil on wood. There's a few canvases in there, and I put it up because I wanted to figure out which ones are done and which ones aren't. Eventually, I'll put little sticky notes on them to figure out which ones are and which ones aren't. I'm going to set you down here on the floor for a second.
Okay.
Um, this is another kind of mixed media piece of of horses. This is, I think, oil wash on gesso. This was a demo for a class. This painting, this is one of the first. I did this in 1988, and this is one of the first paintings where I really kind of felt like I was getting somewhere. This is a lot of different. This is dyes, watercolor, acrylic, lots and lots of layers of spray fixative, and then used to seal layers, and then a product called matte medium. So if you spray crystal clear, which is a glossy spray fixative onto a surface, it seals whatever's on the surface. And then you can go on. Then you put Liquitex matte medium on top of that, and then you can paint because the matte medium creates a neutral surface. And that's something I learned directly from Baron's story. And so there's layers and layers of media on there. Let's see what else I got.
Like I bet those some of those are just priceless to you too. I'm assuming.
Well, some of them. I mean, yeah. I mean, I still have a painting I did of Laurie Anderson, the sort of mixed media musician, performance artist back in 1986. That I won't sell. I did sell the second Laurie Anderson piece I did, like I did like in '89, and sometimes I wish I still had it. These are just a lot of these are class demos. So like this is a class demo using single color. This is a grayscale class demo. This is on a surface called clayboard, which is basically a piece of hardboard or masonite with a clay coat on the surface, and this is oil.
It's interesting when I look at some of these because I don't like it's like you have kind of like the painting behind me. You have what I would say like that like I can look at it and tell right away that you like that. You have this like I don't really know what to call the style. I'm just going to
Yeah.
call it the Koeb style.
That's okay. We
Yeah.
we can copyright that later.
But yeah, you've got kind of this just kind of rough, like primitive look. It's just it fascinates me because it's one of those that like I don't know. I don't know how to explain my fascination with your work in that style.
No, I
Um,
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say. It's funny you say rough because when I was originally starting, I was trying to make everything smooth and like eliminate brushstrokes.
yeah,
But I'm definitely not in the same place. Um, you know, thank you though. I mean, it's very kind of you to say. This is um this is an interesting one. Do you know about Brad Pitt's project to rebuild houses in New Orleans?
I have not heard of that. No.
Right. So there's this project that he started where he was using these houses kind of designed based on geometric shapes
Mhm.
to to basically give people houses who, and help them buy houses and create affordable housing for people whose houses were wiped out during Hurricane Katrina back in what 2005.
It's been a minute.
And
Yeah.
yeah, um, so basically there was an image of him I think that was on on the cover of Time, and I drew from that, and I drew it on these pieces of this is a translucent material called mylar, and I drew it on that, and then I paint. So the pencil drawings on the top, and then the paint, the pink and stuff, is on the back, and then there's some more paint on the surface, and then I cut it out. This is based on a puzzle that I had called Tanagrams. I don't know. It's a puzzle that I had, and I basically cut it out and tried to make it look like one of the houses, and glued it to a landscape of the ninth district, or the ninth ward, I guess it's called, in New Orleans,
That's
based
pretty
on a
cool.
photo. So I wanted it to look like a house. I wanted it to be a portrait of Brad Pitt. Um, and I also wanted it to look like it was being built. So I left it sort of unfinished. So it looks like it's still, because the houses, if you look at them, if you go to the website, I forget what the website is, but the houses were covered in these pink tarps before they were revealed, and there were these pink shapes that they were using.
Oh,
Um,
hey, I need to interrupt you real quick.
yeah, no problem.
I just got some horrible news.
Oh no.
Stan Lee has passed away.
Oh God, that's awful. I'm so sorry to hear
That
that.
sucks.
Yeah.
I don't want to take away from the interview,
No,
but
no, no. I understand.
yeah, my phone is blowing up, and I would be remiss to not mention that.
No, I mean that's horrible news. I mean,
Whew,
Jesus. I mean,
yeah,
you kind of expect, at his age.
yeah,
I mean, I read about him and some of the things he's gone through recently, and um, you know,
yeah.
it's not unexpected, but still it's shocking because, you know, yeah, man, that's horrible.
God, it just the news had to come through while we were doing this. You know,
Right.
I'm like, because I've nothing. I'll go ahead and tell you, I've never dreaded a day more on this channel than the
Right.
day that happened, and here we are. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, um,
Yeah.
but
I
yeah,
mean,
on a lighter note, unless you want to give your thoughts here, I mean, that would be.
I don't know, there was always that controversy, did Stan Lee create Marvel or did Jack Kirby create it, and what the whole, you know, it's it's a debate, that people have.
Yeah,
Um
that will go as long as comics are a thing.
right.
And I honestly think that it's a mixture of both. I don't think any one because I personally don't think Stan Lee would have been able to do it without Jack, and I don't think Jack would have been able to do it without Stan Lee.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know. I know that I mean, all I can say is that because of Stanley, you know, uh Stanley and Jack Kirby and other people. There's a Marvel Comics, you
Yeah.
know, and so I had an opportunity to meet him years and years ago at a comic book convention, and I was in line to have something signed by him. But there was a kid, like I was the last person in line. They were going to cut it off,
Yeah.
and I remember there was a kid behind me who was about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years younger than me, and I know like I could just tell how much he wanted to meet Stan Lee, and so you know I understood that, I got that, and so I remember giving him my place in line, um, because it meant something to me. But whatever it meant to me, it was nothing compared to what it meant for this kid. And I could be misremembering his age, but I do remember that like he really wanted to meet Stan Lee, and so I gave him my place in line, which easy thing to do, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But what I saw was that um, was somebody meeting one of his heroes, and so sometimes you meet your heroes and you wish you hadn't met your heroes,
Yeah.
but other times you meet your heroes and they're kind of exactly like you imagined. And Stanley always seemed like, in person, he always seemed the same to me. Like he always seemed exactly kind of like, what you'd imagine him to be. It was like that was his persona or whatever. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I know that there was some stories about elder abuse and
Yeah, yeah,
liars.
there was a lot of controversy going on the last
And
year or so as to whether he was getting the care. And I know Kevin Smith, filmmaker, actually went public and was like, "Hey, he can come live with me,
yeah,
if need be." And but I would like to think that that was all settled
yeah, I mean,
before
I
his
hope so.
passing.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. It's
I will say I was fortunate enough to be able to meet him,
yeah.
and actually the weekend before my mother passed, believe it or not,
uh,
2014 at Wizard World Chicago, and I was able to get an autograph, and then the next day I went through and was able to get a photo op
oh,
with
that's
him.
cool.
And luckily enough, as I walked up, they were walk up to him, click, walk
Yeah,
away, walk up to him, click, walk away. And I was fortunate enough, I walked up to him, and as I stood next to him, the photographer says, "Hold on just a minute. I need to take a break, change the card out, and to get a drink of water." And I'm like,
right.
"Yes."
So
And
you got
so I got to
time.
stand there and just briefly have a 15-second conversation with Stan Lee, and that was
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
just, in hindsight, probably one of the proudest moments I've ever had.
Oh, yeah. And aren't those great? Like,
Oh yeah,
I was a huge fan of Archie Goodwin. I had read the Alien book that he did with Walt Simonson, and I loved Epic Illustrated. Epic Illustrated, I can't even tell you what that was like to read as a kid because it was so different than everything else. Um, and I got to meet him once several years ago, and he was just really kind and very smart, and had a lot of nice things to say about people. But I mean, like I'd read a lot of his stuff, like Manhunter, and many of the things that he'd written, and so um, to me, that was like meeting one of my heroes.
yeah.
Writers that I like, and
I totally get it.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and so I know for a lot of people, that's what Stan Lee is to them, and so um, I took Facebook off my phone recently because I was looking at it too much, and I have this really I have an addictive personality. I think like
Hey, I feel you.
when I was
Absolutely.
when I was a teenager, I was a smoker, and so when I decided I wanted to quit smoking, I would draw a picture. And so every time I wanted a cigarette, I would draw a picture because I needed something to do with my hands. And so I would draw and I'd draw and I draw and draw and I'd fill up sketchbooks.
I'll say, I bet you have an extensive portfolio.
I have lots of sketchbooks, yeah. Too many. but anyways, so like I found that like I was going and looking at my phone so often. I was looking at Facebook, and there's no need to. It's like the news app. I was looking at the news,
Yeah.
and I took that off my phone too. And now I check it like once a day. And I go to the internet and I check it and I look at it and I see, and I primarily use Facebook to. My cat was like threatening to knock down a painting. Um, I primarily use Facebook to let people know about my work
Hmm.
and what I'm doing, um, and to somewhat to keep up with friends and to see what they're doing. To see my niece. I have a 3-year-old niece. My brother posts pictures of, and that's great to see her grow up and to see my friends' kids and things like that. And to see people that I used to live much closer to and see what they're doing in their lives. But the kind of constant checking in on it and going to it, it was just psychologically I needed the space of not. I'm working on a show. I have a show coming up in one of the galleries at Duke University. It's in one of the student union. It's in the student union building, and I don't know the name of the gallery because they keep sending me information for the two different galleries, and I have to figure out which one it actually is. It's either the Brown or the Reynolds Gallery, and I'm not sure because I've gotten paperwork for both, so I've got to figure that out. Um, but anyways, I just realized in order for me to paint, in order for me to work, in a way, I had to cut off a lot of the input. And so I downloaded the NPR app and I get my news from that. And if I want to hear other news, I guess I could go and look at the New York Times or look at something else,
Oh yeah.
um, you know, or CNN or something like that. Or read a newspaper. But it was kind of overload. So I'm sure that Facebook is blowing up right now
Oh
with.
yeah. Matter of fact, that's one of the things I'm about to do. We have crossed the hour mark.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, it
I
was
told
funny.
you.
No,
I'm sorry.
we're good. We're totally good because I have been enjoying this, and I definitely want to do it again at some point.
Thank you.
I do want to give you the opportunity, Bill, to talk about your, your social media and web presences that you have.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate this, and I know you let me kind of go on, and um,
I love it because see,
I'll regret that later.
I'm a sponge because I absorb
Yeah,
everything an interview throws at me, and then later on, I'll be like, oh, I talked to Bill Koeb, a few weeks ago, and he said this,
yeah,
this, and this, and hey,
yeah,
it's knowledge. So
yeah. I mean, I hope I haven't offended anybody. My brain kind of goes all over the place, and um,
we're
you
all
know,
adults here.
well, the thing is, I mean, that's kind of what this current series of paintings is about. In a way, it's about, I'm doing these paintings with these overlapping images, and things that I've seen, things that I've photographed, things that I can remember, pieces of things, some redrawn from sketchbooks, some um, some are um, people that I've seen very briefly, some from other people's photographs. This is the current one right here.
Oh yeah,
But like my brain kind of works like that. Like I'll think of one thing and then it references something else, and then it references something else, and that leads to another thing, and then eventually, I try to wind my way back to the point that I was trying to make, which I'm sure is confusing for people to talk to me. um so he's crazy, um but yeah, my social media. So what I'm working on right now. So I'm working on these paintings. I don't know how many they're going to be. The largest one so far is 54 inches tall by 78 inches wide, and that's the one next to me.
hmm
And the one to my right is about 48 inches square. Um, there's going to be a lot of them, and they're larger. And it's kind of about time and space and things existing in the same place at different times, but seen at the same time, almost like a stage play where, if you've ever seen a play where they have the lights down and the lights come up on one person
yeah,
and they talk, and then the lights go down on that person, you're still aware that that person's there, then the lights are up on another person and they do their monologue. And those two people may be existing 100 years apart in time, but you're seeing them at the same time, and you're sort of suspending disbelief that you forget that that person's there, but you know that they're still there. And I like the idea of creating images that are sort of like dioramas, where you see little pieces of things all over the place, and some of them don't make sense, um, in motion. And so it's kind of like capturing what memory must be like, or what memory is like, in the way my brain jumps around from subject to subject, but somehow it all kind of, it's like, you have all these dreams at night, but you can only remember one of them.
Yeah.
They say you have hundreds of dreams at night or something like that. Um, and I'm also trying to capture something of the beginning of what images, when I start making images, there's all these marks that I make that I don't know what they mean. And I'm trying not to cover those up so much. I'm trying to reference those. There's a painter named Larry Rivers who does this really incredibly well. And in terms of painters, people I like, Richard Dievenkorn uh, is huge influence. Robert Weaver, the American illustrator, who he's a big influence, um, because he did images of split images where you'd have two different images put together, and you'd have to consider them both at the same time. Um, uh, Mark English is, if you don't know his work, he's in his mid early 80s, and he's still creating new work, and everything he does is different than the last thing, and he's still innovating, and he keeps going. And it's when I got to go to Kansas City a few years ago to teach at the Illustration Academy and visit his house and see all of his originals and see his current work, and he's such a kind man, and he's he's pushing image making in a way that a lot of younger artists aren't. um, an incredible painter. Anyway, so those people are influencing me now. My social media presence, so I'm on Facebook, just my name, Bill Koeb.
Hmm.
And then I have a Facebook page that's just my last name, Koeb.
If
Um,
you want to know how to spell that, it's actually on the screen right now.
yeah, Koeb. Yeah. Not like Kobe, but Koeb.
Yeah.
Um, and then I have my website, which is koeb.com.
That was
Um,
actually where I first found you, by the way.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I really appreciate you looking me up and liking my work so much. It's I don't really hear from people very much. I post something and then friends like it and this and that, but I don't often get a chance to talk about it. And so I appreciate this, and it's very humbling when somebody tells you they like your work. Um, at least for me, it is, because I live with it so much. I don't have an objective view of it.
Well, I'm just very happy that, somebody who has, the premier painting in Crow City of Angels wants to come on Untitled Nerd Network and talk to me,
Oh, no, it's great. I appreciate it. Awesome. Um, and before I called you, I looked you up on YouTube, and I was watching a little bit of a video before. So um, um, it's cool. I'm going to go back and watch some of the other ones. Um, but and then at Bill Koeb, just my name with no spaces, is my Instagram. And then I started a new Instagram account because I wanted to just show my monotypes. Um, and it's called Monotype Daily.
Yeah, that wasn't too long ago. That was just in the last few.
That was last week.
Yeah, I was about to say, it ain't been long. I remember seeing it.
Yeah. So I posted that, and you know, I don't know, it's got like 70 followers in a week or 80 followers in a week. I'm like, that's not bad. Let's see if those metrics continue, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's just, for me, it's just I can get stuff out there, and I can share what I'm doing. I can see what other people are doing. Yesterday was Armistice Day,
Hmm.
and George Pratt, who did Enemy Ace, War Idol, and Batman, and also Wolverine, and tons of other great work. George has been forever drawing and painting soldiers and images based on World War I imagery, and he posted a dozen or so uh, beautiful pieces um, on his Instagram the other day. And so that was, George is a good friend of mine, so it's nice to see what he does. And he used to live in this area, but now he's down in Florida, um, teaching at Ringling College of Art. But yeah, so I love it when people post. It's like Pinterest, like I see all the paintings on Pinterest and things, and it's like that. I heard Pinterest is used by like a lot of brides and people doing decorating, but
Yeah,
I use it.
it's like a do-it-yourself type.
Yeah, but I use it. I look up artists, and
Oh, they're there. I've actually, I can't remember. I've used it to look up certain art, certain especially like modeling and cosplay and
yeah,
pictures and stuff. It's neat because a lot of people will post stuff on there that hasn't made it commercially. A lot of
yeah,
artists will post stuff
yeah,
that doesn't get put out, but it'll be on their Pinterest. It's
yeah,
really
yeah,
neat to
and that
look at.
it is. It is really cool to look at, and um, anyways, so that's my show. That's what I do, and I'd like to do comics again. I've got a couple of ideas. I've got a time travel love story that I've been making notes about. There are a few writers I'd love to work with, um, that are out there that I've spoken with, that you know if it ever becomes an opportunity to work with them, that would be great. Um, it would be nice to play around with somebody else's toys for a while,
Oh yeah,
you know,
I totally get that.
and there's characters I love. I mean, um, you know, I like, for some reason, Daredevil seems to be a character that I like to draw a lot in terms of comics, and um, he's sort of a fascinating one to think about. The whole sensory deprivation thing, and the enhanced senses and stuff. That would be a character to have to who must have a really interesting inner dialogue, because on one hand he's this lawyer and he's supposed to hold law and order, but on the other hand he's basically like seeking people out and beating the crap out of bad guys, and um, um,
Yeah, he doesn't have that. Like the Punisher's like all or nothing. He has to kind of
right,
balance.
right, and like Batman, I think I don't think there is a Bruce Wayne anymore. I don't think that person really exists except for like as a mask
Yeah,
that Batman puts on when he goes out in the real world. Um, see, I think like Superman's really Clark Kent. He just pretends to be Superman.
yeah,
He's kind of like, he's this like farm boy. He's this like very kind of typical cliche farm boy. But Batman, there in my mind, there is no Bruce Wayne. Batman is really like, there was a schism, and I'm talking about a fictional character here, but which is silly. Guy dresses up like a bat, but like, I don't think Bruce Wayne really exists except for as a means to let Batman do what Batman's going to do. Um, and
that
so,
is true. The resources, more or less.
yeah, and I mean, he's kind of a means to the end, but as a personality, I think when Batman is Bruce Wayne, he's pretending to be a human being. He's pretending to be somebody um, that's acceptable,
Yeah,
and I've always kind of felt that because he's always kind of been played that way.
yeah.
Um, and I remember reading The Dark Knight Returns, and Bruce Wayne doesn't realize he shaved his mustache off, and he's kind of like, he can't sleep at night, and then basically it's like Batman's coming back, and there's nothing he can do about it. Um,
I've actually never
and
read that. I'll have to make it a
oh
point.
my God, the Dark Knight book! Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I
like,
know. There's a lot of big movies and almost iconic works and comics and things like that I've just, for whatever reason, never gotten around to
yeah,
seeing.
that is a really that's a great book, man. That's like the Miller Jansen art on that, and then the Lynn Varley colors on that. She also colored an Elektra book that Frank Miller did. Um, that's just beautiful. There's a black and white version of it too that you can find. I saw it at Barnes and Noble.
I've actually
Um,
heard of it.
yeah,
I have.
yeah. So the Dark Knight Returns book is just um, it's it's dark, it's good, and
It was like a genre redefining work when it came
yeah,
out.
yeah. And so when I draw Batman, sometimes I'll draw a Batman just in my sketchbook, but I'll find an actor like Clint Eastwood or Sam Shepard or even Jack Nicholson. I'll find somebody that, or just the most beat up picture of a boxer that I can find, and I'll use that as a base, and then I'll draw the character kind of on top. Like I'll draw that face, and then I'll kind of draw Batman on top of that. And I love the old Batman. It's I don't know, it's just fun. Anyways, I know you have
Yeah.
to wrap up.
Yeah, we're good, man. Like I said, I love having you on. I'd love to do this again. And after I'll say our goodbyes after the interview. I'll cut, and then we'll be like, hey, see you later.
Sounds good.
But yeah, this has been really cool. Like I said, maybe like I try to have special people on that we talk to regularly, like a couple times a year. Sometimes. But yeah, awesome. Like I said, the man behind the painting here, Bill Koeb, been
Thank you.
awesome enough to be here with us, and yeah, we've like leached an hour and a half of his time from him.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was a threat, right?
Really appreciate you coming on, man. It has been fun. I've learned a lot, and anytime I can say that, I am just totally ecstatic that
Thank you, Lonnie,
that we can learn some things, especially some of the earlier stuff with the Crow, and being able to learn some of the story behind the work here. So
yeah, that was a fun experience, and it's God, doing stuff for movies is just fun, and just being on the set, and it's a completely different world. And I remember even watching an actor act. Um, it looks so different than when you see it on film.
yeah,
Um, it's hard to get. For me, it was like that doesn't look real at all. But then you see it on film, and you're like, wow, that's amazing. How did they do that?
post production goodness goes
All the
into it.
post, yeah, all the post production stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it would be nice to do that again. And I always look for art in movies. I keep my eyes open on that. But anyways, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Awesome. Well, this has been our interview with Bill Koeb, awesome artist of North Carolina, and the man behind the painting here. I'm Lonnie with Untitled Nerd Network, brought to you by both Infinity Flux, our local comic shop, and your local Satanist, our local plant-based eatery. And we will see everybody later on for our interview with Leah Meter-Neek. I hope I pronounced that right. We'll be doing that tonight, probably airing it tomorrow, and I'm sure at some point today we're going to be doing a Stan Lee retrospective. So anyway, thank you everyone for coming on and joining us, and we'll see everybody later.